Okay, it's the unknown mechanic back again, and today we are going to be working on a Husqvarna professional chainsaw, and this channel is for the shop owner who doesn't have technicians that are up to par and are always fumbling and bumbling, without coming to a correct diagnosis and wasting a lot of time ordering the wrong parts, putting parts on a dead machine, and so on. And it's also for the mechanic who wants to raise their level of proficiency and make accurate, quick diagnosis. And also the homeowner do-it-yourselfer who may want to tackle this by themselves and learn, how a professional would proceed. So this saw belongs to, oh God, it's my worst customer, Bert Toadberger. And it says, customer replaced carburetor because diesel fuel was run in the saw and it will not start even after the carburetor was replaced. So yeah, that sounds like something that Bert would do. He likes to, his go-to fix is just slap a new carburetor on it. Whatever's wrong with the machine, just slap a new carburetor on there. And he doesn't call this Husqvarna, he calls it a Husky Various. And no matter what kind of chainsaw it is, it's always a piece of junk, whether it's a steel or an Echo. They're both pieces of junk to him. So never wants to look in the mirror when there's a problem with the machine. So he also has a tendency to want to buy cheap knockoff clone parts whenever possible from like Alibaba or eBay or whatever. And he probably tried to buy this carburetor there for 10 cents or whatever the Chinese make them for. But this one is an Autotune. It's a 562 XP. Judging by the serial number, it's 2016 version. And I don't think you can find a fake carburetor on the internet for an Autotune saw. So I remember he did buy the carburetor from us and he tried to install it himself. Looks like he was somewhat successful because it's on there. But obviously it didn't work. So he gave up and brought the saw in, and so now we're going to troubleshoot it. And Husqvarna, has a Pro 2-stroke Autotune diagnostic sheet that has a number of steps that you want to follow. And this is more for warranty because it describes taking pictures, for failure analysis and so forth. But, it does have some steps that they want you to do. Check the fuel quality, pressure vacuum test, compression test. It says actual values required. Verify or adjust fuel settings. Check ignition coil, check flywheel key, so on. And I'm going to show you some of the other ones that some of my other vendors supply. Echo has an engine evaluation guide, and it has lots of steps that you have to go through and check the boxes. And Steel has what they call an engine check. And it's the same kind of thing. You start at step 1 and you end up at step 29, and you kind of check the boxes along the way. And these are pretty helpful just to make a do-it-yourselfer proceed in a logical manner, or a new apprentice mechanic. You just make them do it. And I have also printed a copy of the mechanics workbook. We call it a workshop manual. Covers the 562, including Autotune. And I marked a couple spots in the book here. Here it says, note, when replacing the Autotune unit or the carburetor with an Autotune unit, the unit must first be programmed before it can be used, and refer to the local support page for more information. And then the other thing I found in here is adjustment of an Autotune at the replacement of the carburetor. The chainsaw will become completely adjusted automatically after a few fuelings at normal running. The high-speed part is set during loaded running, such as cutting and felling. The idle part is set when the chainsaw idles for some time. So, I may need to ask Bert for the original carburetor, and I might have to transfer some information using some firmware, to make the thing run right. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take the new carburetor off and put the original carburetor back on. Obviously, the carburetor is not the problem. So we are going to skip a lot. We're going to take these out of order. Most of these engine checklists and engine evaluation guides, the compression test is fairly early in the order. But one rule I have, since I've troubleshooted hundreds, probably thousands of chainsaws, is this rule you must remember. Moron plus chainsaw equals piston seizure. So we are going to go directly to the compression test, and we're going to be removing the muffler and doing a cylinder inspection first. If I've had a lot of crappy mechanics that worked for me in the past. We had Secret Agent Man and the Big Asset and Gomer and Dingus and Sniffles and Scratch. And a lot of times they would monkey around trying to fix a burned up, overheated saw by throwing other parts at it and wasting a lot of time, bench time, before they finally discovered that the saw needs a major top end rebuild. So we're going to take a shortcut and take things out of order, and we're going to go directly there because of my rule. I'm going to make it easier to work on by taking the bar and chain off. A little bit more space on the bench. And it's got captive bar nuts, that's nice. Okay, see the chain catcher is in place. That's good. And the sprocket, the rim sprocket, is in very good condition. I do see some melting here on the cylinder cover right there. That could be some kind of a muffler issue. That spot's melted. And there's a little bit of road rash on the starter housing. This thing was probably took a slide down the asphalt at one time or another. Cover off. Another rule that I have is if I don't find anything wrong with the cylinder and piston, is any time that somebody else does some work on a unit and they fail and they bring it into you, you are going to revisit all of their work. We have no idea if he installed this carburetor correctly. See, the air filters doesn't have one single speck of sawdust on it. It's got the correct spark plug. That's a CMR6H. Wasn't too tight. The spark plug is brand new. This engine is never fired. I'm surprised he actually put the right plug in it. Okay, so in the service manual, I was unable to find in the specifications. They do not have a compression reading in the front of this book. There's some specs, some of the service tools. I had to call Husqvarna tech support, and they told me that the range is 130 to 160. So below 130 is low, above 160 is too high. Maybe there would be excessive carbon in the cylinder or something like that if the compression was too high. Compression is too low. Going to be looking at piston and cylinder damage, piston rings, dirt ingestion, that kind of thing. In this case, we know the saw has had diesel in the tank. It doesn't have diesel in there now, I checked. But we're going to proceed with the compression test. I've got a 10 millimeter adapter. And we do want to make sure that the compression release is not activated. Some saws have deco valves, and if you are careless and you activate the decompression valve and then you test the compression, you'll get a false reading. So we want to make sure that that valve is not active. Let's see what happens. Make sure that's off. Okay, and the compression is reading 70 pounds, about 70, maybe 69 pounds. That's way too low. So that's kind of as I had suspected. So we are going to go right to a cylinder and piston inspection. You have to take the muffler off. Get a flashlight, look in there. Well, that wasn't very tight. Almost tighter. Okay, the spark arrestor is intact. That's good. And I really don't see anything wrong with the muffler that would have caused that melting. Okay, that's a better look. That looks like cylinder fins were coming into contact with this cover. Maybe this cover, okay, there's a crack right there. And so this part of the cover is allowed to come lower and contact the hot cylinder. You can see some marks here that don't look good. I'm not sure what that's all about. Oh, it's roasted. Okay, I'm gonna bring the camera in for a close-up. Let's see if we can do this. Get the light. And get a better angle. Okay, it looks like Chernobyl in there. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to look up a top end for this and price out the parts and estimate the amount of labor. And I'm going to also, when I contact him with an estimate, I'm going to request the old carburetor in case I need it for the Autotune programming. So it's time for some parts lookup, and then a phone call, and if he authorizes the work, we're going to come back and do a top end replacement on a 562 XP Autotune. Okay, I was able to get a hold of Bert, and I have prepared an estimate, and he approved the estimate. So we are going to order some parts, and we're going to come back and revisit this one when the parts are here, and I'll try to make the video short, so I'm not going to show a lot of the tear down nuts and bolts. Just going to stop at certain points along the way that are important, but we're going to rebuild this one. So that's it for today. We'll revisit it soon. Okay, we're back, and we have received some parts from Husqvarna, or as Bert would call them, Husky Various. We have a cylinder base gasket, a muffler gasket, and a cylinder and piston. And we are going to be doing some tear down in preparation for cleaning before I remove the top end. I don't like to let any dirt get inside the internal parts of the engine. I like to clean the outside first before I open anything. And that will involve removing the carburetor and blocking off the intake port. And the muffler's already off, and I've got a block-off plate that will fit the exhaust port. And we'll be going over to my Alkeus pressure washer. It's an ADF glove box pressure washer, and it has heated water and a liquid detergent, and a handheld gun that will produce about 500 psi, and it will thoroughly clean everything. And I got some positive feedback on a recent video, so I'm not going to omit that part. I'm going to show the cleaning process on this video, but I am going to do the tear down off camera to make the video shorter. Now, one thing I did notice is the clutch shoes. They have a tremendous amount of sawdust packed in between the clutch shoe and the spider, and the clutch springs also are packed with sawdust, and it's not allowing the clutch shoes to fully retract, and there's not a lot of clearance. The clutch is dragging, and so I'm going to have to address that. This clutch is just packed with sawdust. I'm going to have to take that apart and clean it. So I'm going to pause for now, and we're going to come back when I'm ready to do the cleaning. And I've got the camera moved over to the other spot. Okay, I thought I would bring you back in the teardown process because I found a couple of issues. I took the starter off, and the posts here on the starter pulley, they're about to break off and go flying into catastrophic projectile failure. You can imagine what would happen if these pins came out while the saw was running. It would destroy the flywheel and the ignition coil, and maybe get out and actually injure a person. So that's the first thing I found, and luckily I have the pulley in stock. So I am going to be replacing the pulley. Got this one is brand new and the pins are secure. So the other thing that I found was that there's supposed to be a metal intake support sleeve in the intake boot, and it's not there. And so I'm going to have to order that. I don't stock that. The air cleaner base, this is very easy to overlook, but there is a small rubber seal, and there's also an O-ring, and that would be very, very easy to overlook and put the air cleaner base on and omit those. That's got to be an airtight seal. So those are there, but the metal sleeve for the intake boot is not there. And that's because Bert, he tried to fix this on his own, and he ordered this carburetor. This is a brand new carburetor, and he was never able to get the saw to run. So I'm going to have to pause the job and order this intake sleeve. But I can continue the tear down, the cleaning process, and put the top end on. I can do a lot of work to this saw before I have to halt. Now I did find I don't have the right Husqvarna clutch removing tool, but I do have a Johnsered one, which is a cousin of Husqvarna. They're very similar, and it fits perfectly. And in order to make it work, you have to have a piston stop. And I've got an Echo 10mm piston stop that will fit this. And it doesn't matter if the old piston is damaged from using the wrong piston stop, because it's already a seized, ruined top end anyway. So I can easily get that off. Now Husqvarna, for the do-it-yourselfers, they do have 3 notches in each clutch shoe, or notch in each of the 3 clutch shoes, and you can use a hammer and a punch, and you would remove this clockwise. It's a left-handed thread. But since I have the right tools, I'm going to be able to get that off no problem. That is tight. Very tight. Probably have to soak that with some penetrating oil and maybe give it a little bit of heat. We'll let that soak overnight and I'll deal with that later. But yeah, I'm going to have to delay the job when I get to the point where the carburetor goes back on. So I'm going to pause for now, and then we're going to do some cleaning at the pressure washer. Okay, I thought I would bring you back during the teardown process because I've discovered another issue. The penetrating oil had been sitting here on the clutch spider and crankshaft stub, and it was very, very tight. I had to get a cheater bar on my John Surratt clutch tool to get it off, but I did get it off, and I noticed that the sprocket seemed unusually large, and when I took a closer look at it, I noticed that it's a steel, and it says 404-7, and this saw it's 62 cc's, and you know that would typically take like a 24, maybe max 28-inch bar, and so a 404 is an unusually large chain, and something's not right. So I decided I would look at his bar, and I can clearly see that there's a 3/8 on the bar nose, and the chain, this is a steel chain. It's not an Oregon or a Husqvarna, and that's okay. You know, Coke, Pepsi, Coke, you can put a steel chain on a Husqvarna saw as long as it's the right one. And I've looked at this, and this is a 3/8 pitch, 50 gauge chain, and it properly fits this bar, but it does not fit a 404 7-tooth rim. Now, if you were to run this with a mismatched sprocket to chain, he would destroy the sprocket and the chain, and maybe even the bar too. You can't mismatch. Everything's got to be matched. And I'm not surprised because, you know, Bert, he's a few quarts short. There's not much going on upstairs. So I don't know how he ended up with a steel sprocket on his Husqvarna saw, but that's typical for him. So I'm going to continue the teardown process, and hopefully I won't find anything else. And if I don't, we're going to be over to the pressure washer, and I'm going to show you the cleaning process. So on to the next step. Okay, I've made some preparation for the cleaning process. I got some positive comments when I showed the steel 025 being cleaned in a prior video, and I usually exclude the cleaning part because I don't think it's that important, but since I did get some feedback, I'm going to put it in, leave it in. And I have prepared by removing the flywheel, and the clutch I've already removed, and I have added 2 gas can pour spout plugs to block the stratified charge air intake, and I've added a block off plate to block off the impulse and the fuel air intake. And then the exhaust is blocked off, and I have put the spark plug back in tight and made sure the deco valve isn't activated. And I have connected the fuel line to the primer return line, and I've also blocked off the tank vent. So there's no possibility of any water entering the inside of the engine. And I've had a lot of crappy mechanics that work for me. We had Secret Agent Man, and The Big Asset, and Scratch, and Gomer, and Sniffles, and Einstein, and Speedy. And you know, most of those guys would just say, oh, you're going to clean it anyway, don't bother. And they would disassemble the motor dirty, and that allows exterior dirt to get into the crankcase. And I'm just trying to minimize that so that this thing is 100% clean before I remove the top end. And then I'll be rinsing the inside of the crankcase with clean 2-cycle fuel to get the metal particles from the scored piston out of the lower end. And I'll be carefully checking the main bearings and big end rod bearing. And that's how we're going to proceed. I think I'm going to shut the camera off and move over to the pressure washer, and I'll turn it back on when I'm ready. Okay, this is an ADF glove box pressure washer. It's made out of stainless steel. It's manufactured in Iowa, and it uses heated water with liquid detergent, and the gun is about 500 psi. And I'm going to be using some engine degreaser and some simple green. going to take it out and finish blow drying it and back to the bench. Okay, we're back after a few days and have some parts come in. The main thing I needed was this support ring that holds the intake boot open to prevent the vacuum from sucking the boot in and creating a leak. That's what Bert omitted when he put the new carburetor on. And the cleaning process, you can see that the engine degreaser removed most of the exhaust stain on the top of the crankcase there under the muffler. And as I mentioned, I do like to clean before I open the engine, just like on an operating table. You know, if you're going to have surgery and, the doctor doesn't sterilize you and wear gloves and a gown and a mask, and the operating room isn't clean, you're going to get germs going inside and you'll get an infection and die. And so I don't like to open an engine that I'm going to rebuild before I clean the exterior. So it's pretty clean. So we're gonna take this top end off. And the first thing I need to do is this upper anti-vibration mount is fastened to the cylinder. So I'm going to get that out first. There's not a lot of room to work here, so I'm going to loosen this one. Actually, not loosen it, take it all the way out. And that'll give me enough room I can get in here. And then once you get it loose enough, you can turn it. These ball drivers work well for areas where you don't have a direct straight access. They can come in at an angle. Put that back in so I don't lose it. Let's see if we can lift this straight up now. Still got one holding it. There we go. I'm going to bring the camera in for a close-up so you can see the damage on this piston. Yeah, it's pretty bad. You have to pry the circlips out of the wrist pin. This one has hookless style. going to take both of them out. All right, we'll see if this piston pin just pushes through. No. Okay, I'm going to have to pause while I'm going to go get a wrist pin pressing tool so that I can force that wrist pin out. I do not want to hammer on the connecting rod and put any kind of side load on the rod. So I'm going to pause for a second and go look for some piston tools. Okay, I've gathered up some more tools that I'm going to need to proceed. First and most important is a piston pin pressing tool. This one is a Shindaiwa, or as Bert would call it, a Shindawis. And it's not exactly the right size, but I think it's going to work. It's only going to go in from the sprocket side. That's the only room that there is for it. Okay, it worked. Got the pin out. All right. Well, just some observations here. This piston it's very heavy. Could be quite a bit lighter than that, and also the wrist pin location is quite far down from the crown. It's kind of a top-heavy piston. Maybe that has something to do with the stratified charge, low emission aspect of this engine design. It's probably very low polluting. I also noticed that the crankshaft, it's got crankcase stuffers mounted on the crankshaft, and that's kind of a poor man's way of getting a full circle crankshaft in your high performance two-stroke engine. And what those crankcase stuffers do is they take up all the dead space inside the crankcase and make the lower end of the engine very efficient in drawing in the intake charge and then pushing the intake or the stratified charge up through the transfer ports. So you'll only find that on like an XP series saw. I don't think you're going to find this type of technology in one of their homeowner saws. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be removing the intake off of the old cylinder and transferring it to the new cylinder in preparation for installing it. And I'm going to take this outside and then rinse this lower end of the engine in clean 2-cycle fuel, probably multiple times. Now, I want to remove any of the debris from the piston skirt after the piston seized. And I don't feel any bearing damage. The bearing feels, the main bearings feel very smooth. The big end rod bearing is not discolored or blue in any way, nice and tight. There's a small amount of discoloration on the top of the rod, but nothing that would disqualify this this engine from being rebuilt and have a new top end on it and live a second life. So I'm going to pause the camera and I'm going to shorten the video by doing that stuff off camera. Okay, I've got a lot of my parts transferred, the deco valve and the intake tract, and I was looking at this new piston, and I panicked because the old piston is a flat top, and the new one has got a depression, a recess in the crown, and I thought maybe I had ordered the wrong part number, but I double checked this serial number, and that is the part number that the IPL calls out for. And just to make sure, I called Husqvarna Tech, and they checked, and at some point Husqvarna decided to lower the compression on this family of saws, and so this low compression piston is the right one. So I'm going to use it. The pin obviously is a lot easier fitting than the old one. I don't need any tool to push that in. There's one snap ring pre-installed on the flywheel side of the engine. They did supply two circlips, so in case I lose one, I've got a backup. Sometimes they go flying across the shop. And I do have a new wrist pin bearing. I'm going to use it. And in the event that I fail a pressure and vacuum test, I've got a plug that I can substitute for the deco valve, so I can get an accurate reading and not worry about the deco valve leaking and give me a false result on my test. So my engine assembly lube is nothing more than 2-cycle oil. In this case, it's steel HP oil. And I'm going to be oiling the main bearings and the big end rod bearing. And I'll be oiling the cylinder and piston after I get the piston installed. And these can be a little bit tricky to get in. Also, you do have to be, on some chainsaws, the cylinder base gasket will not pass over the piston after the fact. This one is not a problem. I can put it on before, I can put it on after. So I'm going to put it on after. Sometimes they go in easy, and sometimes you got to play with them. There. Okay. That went right in. A little bit of fiddling. Now the circlips, I like to install the circlips with the opened end facing either 12 o'clock or 6 o'clock. If you put the circlip with the opening facing at 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock under very, very high RPM, it's possible for that snap ring to start flexing. And if it flexes enough, it'll jump out and it'll destroy the engine. lost a snap ring. That's exactly why we have a backup. Can probably find that one. And that one went in. Okay, so I've got the opening positioned at 12 o'clock. My arrow is pointing towards the exhaust port. And next, I'm going to have to oil the cylinder and piston and use a ring compressor and a support block. You've got to position the ring end gap where the pin is. There's an anti-rotation pin. Now the service manual describes putting some silicone sealant on 2 locations on the gasket, across here and across here. And oddly enough, it's only on one side. And I think that may be because this engine, as I mentioned, it's got a crankcase stuffers on the crankshaft, and it's very effective at pumping the lower end of the engine. And you can, especially in this area here, this is kind of sticking out like a sore thumb, and a strong enough pressure pulse and vacuum pulse will start working on that gasket and maybe cause it to suck in or blow out. And so maybe that's why the service manual recommends sealing here and here. But what I've done is I've used a liquid gasket, and I've already sprayed the gasket, and I've allowed it to become tacky. And so the entire gasket is going to be sealed. Okay, and I'm also going to be installing my cylinder screws here while it's easier. And I really don't know what the purpose of these extension sleeves is. I would just guess that maybe they help in torque retention, or maybe they dissipate heat. Maybe somebody in the comments can clarify that as to why Husqvarna uses those sleeves. All right. And put a little Loctite on them. And one other thing I noticed, you do want to inspect these parts before you put them on, but I can see that it's kind of got a yellow gold tint to the cylinder surface, and that usually indicates that it's Nickel instead of chrome. Both are very good surfaces. Each one has a little advantage over the other. I think chrome is more dirt resistant and can tolerate more dirt ingestion. But one thing I notice is the crosshatch pattern that's applied to the surface here is perfect. You're just not going to find you know, an aftermarket cylinder that I think is of this quality. This is a genuine Husqvarna cylinder. I'm very impressed with the quality, and I'm also impressed with the price. The price is very favorable. Oil that up. Oil the piston. And we're going to hope we can get this to go right on. I got it. Okay. There, got it. Don't want to force anything. All right, now I have my my torque wrench. I have my torque wrench set at 10 Newton meters. I'm going to use a crisscross pattern. All right, so that is the technical part of the top end. So I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to prep for a pressure and vacuum test, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready for that. Okay, this is my setup for crankcase pressure and vacuum testing. I had to remove my homemade block-off plate and my 2 gas can spout plugs that were blocking the clean air stratified charge intake, because this is good enough for preventing pressure washer water from entering the engine, but it is not good enough for a crankcase pressure test. So now I've got the Husqvarna factory plate and plugs in there. And oddly enough, the service manual does not require a vacuum test. It only mentions a pressure test. And they want the crankcase pumped up to 0.8 bar, and it must not drop below 0.6 bar within 30 seconds or less. So we're going to give it a shot and see what happens. Okay, there's 0.8 bar. And we have almost no needle movement at all. This is going to pass. That's good enough. I'm satisfied. I'm going to switch to vacuum, and I have removed the decomp valve and installed temporarily the 10mm plug in the decomp valve hole, and that is to prevent the vacuum tester from drawing this valve open and giving a false result on the test. So there'll be no doubt. So I've got this set to vacuum now. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it up to 0.8 bar. That's about 0.5. And we do have a little bit of drop, very, very minute. My power probe is a little tired. And one thing you do have to be aware of is the red scale on the inside above 0 is PSI, and going negative into a vacuum, it's inches of mercury. So that's a little bit tricky. So I'm relying on the outer black numbers only, because that's bars, negative and positive. So that's a pass. So what I'm going to do now is remove all of the block-off plates and reinstall the deco valve and the spark plug, and I am going to set up for the Husqvarna service hub to update the firmware for this brand new carburetor, and also the piston. And this has got a low compression piston in it, and the ignition's got to be reset for that. So I'm going to come back when I'm ready to, and we'll keep the video shorter. Okay, I've got the Husqvarna service hub already hooked up, and to make the video shorter, I've made all the connections and got it to the right point where I've got 2 green lights and I've got a window here ready to continue. The saw has been identified by serial number and product number code, and I had a little bit of trouble, sorting through all the spaghetti in this service hub. There's many cables, all kinds of cables in there, and I was brain farting and trying to connect to this terminal block. And then I realized you got to connect the carburetor, and then you have to connect to this pigtail on the carburetor in order to get this thing ready. And I'm more familiar with the Steel M-Tronic and using their MDG1. So we're going to continue here and see what we can do. And yeah, it's asking for, yeah, that information is good. Okay, the first thing it's asking for is the carburetor number. So this is a brand new carburetor. And it's 14,058B. That would be this one. So I'm going to select that. And then the next, it's asking for the number on the electronics on the side of the carburetor. And this is a 3201. And then next, it's asking for the ignition coil number. And this is a 617001. And then it's asking for the piston number. And we're going to be discussing this low compression piston after I get done updating this. So that's going to be the low compression piston that I put in it is the 504701, which is this first one. Okay, now I've got a warning message. You know, the selected piston article number may not match the actual piston in the product. Selecting an incorrect article number could result in fatal damage to the engine. Well, we know it doesn't match because the one I took out was a flat top. So I'm going to proceed. And it seems to be updating. I don't know how long this takes. Maybe what I'll do is, while that's spinning there, talk a little bit about, you know, some of the people on the internet are really into hop-up and performance mods into their chainsaws. And what a lot of those guys are doing is they're doing a cylinder base gasket delete, and some of them are even machining down the cylinder flange, and that raises the compression. And you know, they're grinding out the ports, doing porting, and they're going to take these flat top pistons and machine around the perimeter and make a pop-up piston out of one of these flat tops. And oh, we've got a message here that the configuration is complete, and now I can close this. So firmware is up to date. I get a little green box there. And I think that might be it. It says firmware update succeeded. So we're going to close that window. Now, in my area, the government is absolutely bonkers about policing lawn and garden equipment, and pretty much most of the gas equipment is banned, and people are transitioning to expensive, underpowered, take forever to charge, battery stuff that just costs double, triple what a gas product would cost. And if somebody were to do modifications on a piece of outdoor power equipment and do a muffler mod and take out the spark arrestor and cut the baffles out of the muffler, or put a bark box on it, I call them fart boxes, or they put these ridiculous long spikes on the front of the power head, and they want to get those spikes through that prickly bush into that crotch, and they got to put an extra long bar on it that it wasn't designed to pull. And they're chainsaw racing, but they're not really chainsaw racing. My customers want durability, longevity. They don't want to have to bring this saw back after it's blown up from performance mods. They want to get the longest possible service life out of the machine before anything breaks on it or fails and they have to come back into the shop. So, there's a difference between drag racing, going a quarter of a mile and then blowing up your motor and rebuilding it every run, or, having an endurance racer that runs 24 hours continuously. And so that's what we're trying to do here. So I'm going to pause the camera, and I'm going to reassemble. We're going to put this back together. I'm going to re-gap that new NGK plug, because most NGK plugs come out of the box gapped wrong. They're typically 26 thousandths. Husqvarna requires a 20 thousandths gap. I am going to bring you back when I repair the starter, so you can see the starter repair and the rewind spring going in there. That's something that's always valuable. And then we're going to try to start it and run it. Oh, and I also was lucky enough, I found my piston circlip retaining ring that went flying across the shop. It was on the floor here. So I know it's not inside the engine. That's a good thing. So I'm going to pause, and we're going to come back when I'm mostly assembled. Okay, I brought you back just for the starter. I'm going to do this very quickly. First thing, test question. Why do you think the starter posts are leaning over and broken like that? I'll give you 10 seconds. Okay, time's up. Probably wasn't 10 seconds. When this engine seized, the operator, Bert, he pulled on the rope multiple times so hard that he broke this pulley. This saw probably seized several times before it just would not start and run anymore. And during that process, that's how this pulley got broken. You always have to think beyond the symptom, and you have to cure the disease. If you just repair the starter and put it back onto a seized chainsaw and pull hard enough, you'll break a brand new pulley. So that's a lesson for you apprentice mechanics trying to learn out there. Another lesson is the rewind spring. You can see that it's got a funny reverse bend in it. And one time I told Sniffles to repair the starter on a steel line trimmer. And steel uses the same technology as this Husqvarna, where the end of the spring has a reverse bend, and that's so that the spring can be a lighter gauge but still have the return strength of a heavier gauge rewind spring. It's modern technology. So Sniffles, he was trying to wind this thing up the wrong way. He was winding it up like this, and then he gets to the normal bend, and he's bending it around the wrong way, and he just fucked up a spring. So, you know, the bend is normal. It's supposed to be there. And to put this thing back in here, you've got to put it in kind of backwards and start. And it's a good idea to do this with gloves and safety glasses. Because it's not that easy to put them in. Okay, that is correct. Now, what I like to do is use a lightweight oil on the spring. And then I use grease on the center post. And then you have to kind of look at where the spring anchor is and drop your pulley in there so that it engages. And it's not quite in there yet. There, now it's in. And this starter can be fully assembled and the rope put in last. Some starters, the rope has to be installed first because the rope knot pocket is on the opposite side of the pulley that's inaccessible. And there is a notch in the pulley so that you can pre-tension. And I like these little micro torches for rope burning. And I've already pre-tied a knot, and I want it, thoroughly recessed down into the knot pocket so that it is definitely below the level of the the pins and the pawls. And Steel, in their starter grips, they have a 3.5 millimeter hole here and a 3 millimeter hole in here. And so that your different sizes of rope can share one starter handle depending on which hole you use. Like if this was a 3 millimeter rope, you would go through your 3.5 millimeter hole here and then again through your 3 millimeter hole in here. Husqvarna does not have that. So you've got to tie a big granny knot here. This is the knot that I like to use. It's the steel knot. And hopefully that won't pull through. And now you can pre-tension. I'm going to try 5 turns and see what happens. And that's not enough. So I'm going to go 2 more. You get it too tight, and you can undo it using that same technique. Okay, that's definitely retracting. Now I want to make sure that I haven't overdone it. So I'm going to pull this all the way out until I hit the knot, and I want to see if I've got a reserve turn left. And I've got about 3/4 of a reserve turn left. So I'm probably 95% of spring capacity, and that's where I want it. So that's your starter repair. It's going to go back on the motor, and the motor is pretty complete. Put the starter back on. What I've done is I have put the 3/8 7/2 rim. I have removed all the sawdust out of the clutch shoes and spider so the shoes retract and there's clearance now between the shoes and the drum. And I have re-gapped the brand new NGK spark plug to 20 thousandths. It was set at 26, that's what they come out of the box. I have replaced the fuel filter. There is a newer fuel filter for the Autotune chainsaws that's it's got a blue color to it, identifying it as a finer micron. So these Autotune saws, they need better fuel filtration. So it's got the newer style fuel filter in it. Got the muffler back on. Replaced one of these clips. And yeah, it's pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to pause the camera and I'm going to bring the computer back because I want to discuss the service bulletin and the piston, the low compression piston. So I'll be right back. Okay, we're back with the computer. And earlier when I was diagnosing the saw, I had to call Husqvarna tech support because I could not find the compression pressure in the service manual. And they told me that the minimum compression is 130 psi and the maximum is 160. And so, it failed the compression test, and I got through the diagnostic part. And I had to call them a second time when I received the parts that I had ordered, because the new cylinder and piston, it did not match what I was removing out of the saw. And I thought I looked up the wrong part number and made a mistake. And they informed me that I had ordered the correct parts and to use them. So that afternoon, I reassembled the saw, and I got to give Mark at Husqvarna Tech Support a thumbs up, because he went to the extra effort of the next morning. He called me and he directed me to this service bulletin. I'm going to bring the camera in, and this is an older bulletin, and it refers to an improved piston for this family of saws. And it says, with this new piston and piston ring design, we're able to lower the compression and therefore improve the product robustness. The piston is interchangeable back to 2014, but cannot be used together with an EL44 or an EL46 carburetor from prior to 2014. And then there's a warning note. It will be necessary to download a new software for the carburetor from our common service tool when repairing an older product with either a new piston or a cylinder with a piston as a spare part. So this saw is definitely not going to auto-tune itself. This is required. And you'll recall that I just went through this and I entered in the carburetor number, the number off of the electronics that are attached to the side of the brand new carburetor, the ignition module number, and the piston part number. And I selected this part number from this piston on the left, and it has the depressed crown or recessed crown, whereas the original piston is a flat top, the one here on the right. And this common service tool that it's referring to, because this bulletin is older, has been updated and replaced with this current Husqvarna diagnostic tool and all these cables that in this orange box. A lot of these cables fit the newer products, the robot lawnmowers and the battery and electric products. And also the computer has to be a Windows 10 or higher. And this one's a Windows 11. And that's because the Husqvarna Service Hub software will not operate on the older, anything less than Windows 10. So this type of a repair, I think, is just beyond what a do-it-yourselfer could do. So this video's at least going to educate you on the proper tools and methods to correctly repair this. So when you do take it into the shop, you know what to expect in the way of a proper repair. You've got to make sure that they've got this stuff and that they can at least have a tech that's done it before, or Husqvarna can walk them through this. Now, earlier in the video, I had gone on a rant because there's a lot of YouTubers out there that do performance mods and porting, and probably offended some of them. But we're coming from a totally different point. The mission statement of the Unknown Mechanic channel is to raise the level of competency and proficiency of the technicians that are working in the dealership and the shop, and they're going to be protecting the owner. And they've got to be able to do accurate, quick diagnostics, and then a proper repair accurately and quickly without making a lot of mistakes. And this machine has got to go out there and be in service for a long period of time. No comebacks. And so that's where we're coming from. Now, I've had a lot of crappy mechanics that worked for me in the past. You know, we had Secret Agent Man, and we had the Big Asset. We had Sniffles and Gomer and Dingus and Scratch and Einstein. And out of all those losers, I think Secret Agent Man might have been able to do it. A very, very outside chance Scratch might have been able to do it. He claimed to have had 40 years experience, but it sure didn't show. And I have one other mechanic that could do it. He might need to call tech support and have a little help, or I might have to look over his shoulder and point him in the right direction, but I think he could do it. Now, getting back to the rant, you know, the performance guys, they could possibly, you know, modify the saw and actually make it dangerous. You know, they would do a muffler mod and take the baffles out of the muffler and take the spark arrestor out, or put a fart box on it. And, you know, if Bert is running a modified saw out on a piece of land and a spark gets out of the exhaust and starts a fire, and a lot of structures are burned, or God forbid some people, you know, die in a severe fire, the fire department's going to be out there in trying to investigate the cause of the fire. If they find out, you know, that you're out there running a saw without a spark arrestor and a modified muffler, and you're going to be in big trouble. And so is the person who modified the saw. And the same thing goes for like safety features. We have to make sure that the chain catcher's on it, the front and rear hand guards are on it, the chain brake is operational, and even the decals, the warning decals, have to be on this. And you know, somebody who does porting, you know, I'm wondering if you know, they have an insurance policy that covers you know, customers being injured or fires starting, property damage, and that kind of thing. We have a $2 million umbrella policy, and if we repair things correctly and we do not modify, Husqvarna or Steel or Briggs & Stratton or Rotary or whoever it may be, if we're sued, their legal department will step right in front of us and take over the defense and litigate the suit. And we might be the third or fourth party down the list of defendants. And because, you know, the Husqvarna and Steel have the deepest pockets. So now these performance guys, I'm wondering if, you know, they port a saw and then the customer runs it and the piston burns up and seizes and blows up. I wonder if they can come back and get their money back, or if they can get a brand new cylinder and piston reported and redone for no charge. Also wondering if, you know, if somebody is injured with a modified saw and there's a personal injury suit, you know, what do? Are they covered? Do they have insurance for that? I doubt it. I call those guys that run the modified saws, I call them throttle blippers, because they're always going ring, 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 ring. They're blipping the throttle all the time. And it's kind of like Einstein, our mechanic, Einstein. You know, when he gets a professional chainsaw and he fixes it, he's out in the back test running, he's blipping the throttle, and he doesn't know, You know, he thinks it gives him like an artificial sense of power, blipping the throttle with a pro saw. And he doesn't know that we're up in the front and we can hear it. And we're up there laughing our heads off when he's test running the saws. And, you know, those guys that they want to modify the saw and they want to put extra long spikes on there, you know, because the thorny, overgrown bush, they got to get through that thorny, overgrown bush into that crotch, and the bar's not long enough when they put the really long spikes on there. So then they've got to put a longer bar on there, put a real long bar on their puny little saw just to get in there to cut. And, you know, so that's my rant. We're just coming from a different side. We want the longest possible repair. I don't care if it's a chainsaw or line trimmer, blower, lawnmower. We want to repair it right so that it will cut the most grass, cut the most wood, cut the most weeds before it breaks again and has to come back in the shop. And that's where we're coming from. So that's the rant. I think we are ready to test run this. I fueled it and oiled it, and I'm going to shut the camera off and we're going to move outside and see if it runs. Okay, we are ready for an attempted first test run. I'm going to follow this procedure. 1, 2, the deco valve. 3, prime it 6 times. Pull the rope 4 times, then open the choke and pull it again. We'll see what happens. Oh, wants to start. Okay, that worked. Okay, we're back in the shop on the bench again after a successful test run. And the idle seemed to stabilize at about 2,700. And the high speed topped out, no load with bar and chain, at about 13,000. And that's pretty good. My thoughts on the Husqvarna 562 Autotune XP are that it's a little more difficult to work on than a steel. There's a lot of stuff packed into a very small air box. The carburetor, the wiring harness, the primer with the supply line, return line, the fuel supply line, the throttle cable connection. It's all wadded up into a ball and jammed into a small area, making it difficult to work on. The other thing I noticed is the cylinder. It's kind of cone-headed, and it reminds me of these Easter Island heads. And before I make these videos, I like to go onto YouTube and see what's out there, because I just don't want to duplicate and make a me too video. I want to offer something new and valuable. And there are a lot of videos on this family of saws, and I noticed that they seize a lot, which is not such a good thing. So the lesson I want to get through on this video to the aspiring mechanic is I want you to think beyond treating the symptom and cure the disease. For example, this starter pulley. The reason why this pulley broke is because the engine seized up and the operator was pulling on the rope so hard to unseize it, probably multiple times, that this pulley broke, and then the engine just would no longer start anymore. Same thing with the piston seizure. You don't want to just put a brand new top end onto a saw that has an air leak or a hole in the fuel line or a clogged fuel filter, or the tank vent's not venting and it's running lean and it's seizing, because if you just replace the cylinder and piston, it'll seize right away again. So I'm confident that this saw is going to run, because the owner told me he put diesel in it, and I pressure and vacuum tested it. It passed. The fuel line's fine. I put a new fuel filter in it. The tank vent is venting. So I know it's going to go out there and run for quite some time trouble-free. So if you like the channel, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and please leave some comments. Nobody ever leaves any comments, so I don't know if I'm doing a good job or not. And watch all my other videos. The Unknown Mechanic signing off. Until the next one, I don't know what it's going to be.